does it say about the state of hockey journalism when the most valuable player in the sport, wearing the C for the most valuable franchise, becomes a subject of trade speculation based on nothing more than vibes and a distorted quote from a rival beat writer? It says that the line between informed analysis and manufactured content has not merely blurred. It has evaporated entirely, replaced by a desperate scramble for clicks that prioritizes sensationalism over documented reality. The recent article suggesting Auston Matthews is contemplating a move to Minnesota is not merely bad journalism. It is a tactical assault on the intelligence of the Toronto fan base, a calculated attempt to exploit a moment of injury and team struggle to generate a fictional narrative that collapses under the slightest application of financial, contractual, or competitive scrutiny. Auston Matthews, Toronto Maple Leafs Captaincy 2026. Let us begin by dissecting the foundational premise of this speculative piece. The notion that something feels wrong with his team and that this amorphous culture problem is driving Matthews toward an exit. This is the oldest trick in the journalistic playbook, when sources are absent and facts are scarce. Culture becomes a convenient ghost in the machine, the invisible culprit that can be blamed for any perceived malaise without requiring a single piece of verifiable evidence. The Toronto Maple Leafs have undergone a significant salary cap surgery, a painful but necessary restructuring that involved the departure of key veterans and the recalibration of offensive dynamics after Mitch Marner's exit. Of course, the team's on-ice chemistry will be affected. Of course, the power play will require adjustments. To conflate these predictable tactical consequences of a deliberate roster overhaul with an existential culture problem is not analysis. It is narrative construction designed to create a springboard for the very speculation it purports to explore. Toronto Maple Leafs roster overhaul tactical adjustments 2026. The true editorial crime, however, lies in the article's egregious misrepresentation of Michael Russo's reporting. Russo, a respected insider for The Athletic, was engaged in a common journalistic exercise, speculating aloud about potential dream targets for Minnesota Wild general manager Bill Guerin, listing prominent American players like Matthews and Brady Tkachuk. He posed rhetorical questions, exploring hypothetical scenarios. The clickbait portal, however, seized upon these rhetorical questions and transmuted them into a definitive statement. Matthews welcomes a change of scenery. This is not interpretation. It is fabrication. There is not a single credible report, not a whisper from Matthews' camp or his agent, Judd Moldaver, suggesting any desire to leave Toronto. To invent such a desire, especially in the midst of his first season as captain, and while he is recovering from injury, is a profound disrespect to his professionalism and commitment. Michael Russo, The Athletic, Auston Matthews speculation misrepresentation. Now, let us turn to the immutable laws of the NHL's collective bargaining agreement, CBA, and the harsh realities of salary cap management, because it is here that the article's fantasy shatters against the bedrock of financial and contractual reality. Auston Matthews possesses the most ironclad contractual protection available in the league, a full no-move clause. This clause is not a suggestion. It is an absolute prohibition. Brad Trailerving cannot trade Matthews without Matthews' explicit written consent. The control over franchise's destiny, in this specific and most consequential instance, rests entirely with the player, not with the front office. Why would Auston Matthews voluntarily abdicate his throne in the undisputed mecca of the hockey world? Toronto is the gravitational center of the NHL universe. The endorsement deals, the global visibility, the immense cultural weight of leading the sport's most valuable franchise. Matthews' off-ice earnings, estimated to be multiples of his $13.25 million annual cap hit, are directly tied to his status as the central star in Ontario. To suggest he would willingly abandon this media empire for a smaller, regional market like Minnesota, simply because Bill Guerin was his former Olympic coach, fundamentally misunderstands the meticulously planned careers of modern professional athletes and the corporate realities of billion-dollar franchises. Baseball and hockey are not summer camps where players switch teams to play with friends. They are high-stakes corporate enterprises. Auston Matthews' full no-move clause NHL CBA implications. But let us indulge, for a fleeting moment, in the absurd premise that Matthews wakes up tomorrow and demands a trade to the Minnesota Wild. How would Bill Guerin, a general manager already operating under severe cap constraints, make this work? The article conveniently reminds us that the Wild recently acquired Quinn Hughes, a phenomenal defenseman with a cap hit approaching $8 million. Add to this Kirill Kaprizov, who is due a massive extension, along with other significant contracts like Matt Boldy, Joel Eriksson Ek, and Jonas Brodin. The NHL's hard cap is unforgiving. There are no hidden pockets of cash. For Minnesota to absorb Matthews' $13.25 million salary, they would have to send an equivalent amount of heavy contracts back to Toronto. This is not a matter of sending prospects and minimum salary draft picks. The financial rules mandate that money must roughly equal money out. This means the Wild would have to divest themselves of core players like Eriksson Ek or Boldy. If they do that, what is the point of the trade? Matthews will be going there to play with those players, not to replace them and leave the team disfigured. The article's suggestion that Toronto will be willing to focus on prospects instead of young NHL players is fiscally illiterate. The league's collective bargaining agreement prohibits trading $13 million for $1 million. This level of financial ignorance should disqualify the author from writing about sports. Minnesota Wild salary cap Auston Matthews trade financial impossibility. This brings us to the corporate insanity of Toronto's side of the equation. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, MLSE. The colossal telecommunications conglomerate that owns the team, the arena, and the broadcast rights does not operate in the business of total rebuilds. A decade ago, they attempted to sell the fan base on a period of pain, and it cost them fortunes in viewership and merchandise sales. Bay Street's business model demands, implores, and obligates the Toronto Maple Leafs to be competitive enough to fill Scotiabank Arena every single night, charging the highest ticket prices in North America. If Brad Treliving were to walk into the MLSE boardroom and propose trading the greatest goal scorer of his generation for two 19-year-old junior players and two first-round picks that wouldn't mature until 2030, he would be summarily dismissed before finishing the sentence. The franchise's market value would plummet. Its brand prestige would evaporate. Toronto's management has a fiduciary duty to maximize the talent around its core, not to detonate the dam and drown the city in mediocrity for another 5 or 6 years. MLSE business model Toronto Maple Leafs rebuild financial implications. The narrative of this article is a patchwork quilt stitched together with pure, unadulterated desperation for an early offseason. The author observed Marner's departure, Matthews' injury, and Bill Guerin's aggressive reputation, threw it all into a blender, and attempted to sell the resulting concoction as legitimate news. The speculation about this offseason potentially being similar to free agency for players with trade protection is a literary device designed to justify the creation of baseless rumors. Players with trade protection force exits when their relationship with management becomes irrevocably toxic. Matthews and the Maple Leafs front office worked hand in hand last summer to forge this new identity. A temporary dip in results in mid-March 2026 does not unravel that meticulously laid plan. The pressure cooker in Toronto is intense. We know this. Wearing the Maple Leaf is not for the faint of heart. Did Treliving put pressure on the roster? Absolutely. It is his job to demand effort, system execution, and tactical adjustments, especially when the team's biggest star is sidelined. But demanding sweat and tactical adherence is light years away from putting the franchise's cornerstone player on a desperation auction block. We understand that the media loves to flirt with chaos in Toronto. If the team wins big, they didn't play anyone. If they lose by 1 goal, the project has failed and the captain needs to be traded. This white noise is the price we pay for supporting the most debated franchise in the hockey world. But our role here in the tactical intelligence room is to be the shield that filters out the stupidity. We consult the spreadsheets, the contractual rules, the salary cap limits, and the business balance sheet. And in absolutely none of these spheres does Auston Matthews' departure to Minnesota Wild make the slightest corporate sense. The verdict on this rumor is signed in red ink. We have shredded the conspiracy theory and exposed the tactical void of this report. Auston Matthews will not be taking his mustache to play in the cold of St. Paul. He will focus on rehabilitating his injury. He will return to the ice at the Ford Foreman Center, and he will lead this team into the postseason with the responsibility that the C on his chest demands. Rest assured, Leafs Nation, do not click on links that promise an apocalypse for our roster. The structure is guaranteed by impenetrable market clauses. Save your energy and your voices for when the playoffs arrive. Because the real battle is resolved on the ice, not on rumor portals. We will continue operating the corporate radars here. Keep the blue blood pumping strong. Wear the colors with pride, and trust that the tactical war room never sleeps. Go Leafs go. And until the next knockout of false narratives.